Hi, have a nice weekend. For today's history video, I thought that we'd talk a bit about a revisionist interpretation of Eisenhower's role in World War II. I'm just reading about it in a biography of Eisenhower, written by Gene Smith, who was a very accomplished biographer, wrote a bio of FDR, I think one of Herbert Hoover, and a couple of others. And he makes the case very different from what other people say about what went on D-Day and later. First of all, he says that the disaster at Omaha Beach was in part caused by mistakes that General Bradley, the commander of Omaha, made. That the bombardment, which at the other beaches was 4 hours, was only 45 minutes at Omaha. And that the landing craft was let off the ship a third further offshore than it should have been. And as a result, it floundered, a great many drowned, and a great many men that got there were washed out and exhausted at the time that they hit the beaches. He also says, more significantly, the theory had been that Montgomery had wanted to do a dash to Berlin. In other words, we broke out of the Normandy area and quickly moved throughout France. And then the question became what we do in our attack into Germany. Montgomery was in the north, Bradley and Patton with the Americans in the south. Montgomery was the British commander. Now, Montgomery wanted all the resources to go to him and make a dash across the north to get to Berlin. And Eisenhower instead chose to attack on a broad front with both the Brits and the Americans advancing simultaneously. And Montgomery argued against it, and Gene Smith says it was a huge mistake to do it the way Eisenhower did it. First of all, he said we didn't have the logistics to sustain a long front, and as a result, they were constantly running out of gas and having to stop. He says that had Montgomery been given the go-ahead to move quickly into Germany, rather than wait for the rest of the battle line to form up, he could have ended the war by Christmas of 1944. Instead, it didn't end until May of 1945. And 2/3 of the casualties the U.S. troops sustained in Europe after D-Day came in the final months when we were stalled trying to cross the Rhine and get into Germany. He also says the Battle of the Bulge, the Ardennes offensive of the German army, would never have happened because Montgomery would have punched through in the north, taken Berlin, and ended the war. He also says that we would have liberated a great deal of Eastern Europe, that we probably could have gotten to Warsaw, and a great deal of the Iron Curtain would never have really been. And finally, and most horrifically, he makes the point that when you look at the percentage of Jews who were killed in those final 5 or 6 months of the war, it's a huge percentage of the total, something like a quarter. And those lives perhaps could have been saved. So, history is really an opinion of what happened. It's not the facts. It's an opinion about the facts. And until now, everybody said, oh, Montgomery was just being a chauvinist. He wanted the Brits to conquer Berlin. He wanted all the glory for himself and all of that. But it appears that maybe he was right. And there's a lot of evidence for that. Brooke, the British General Staff Chairman, and Churchill both felt that way, and it really hasn't been reflected in histories. And this book by Smith really gets to it. Another book that I think you'll find wonderful is Eileen's and my new book that's coming out a week from Monday. It's entitled Screwed. That's the title of it, Screwed. How foreign governments are ripping us off, plundering our economy, and how our leaders are helping them do it. We talk, for example, about how Obama's China policy has absolutely encouraged the Chinese to rip us off and to absorb a huge proportion of our discretionary spending that gets diverted to creating jobs in China. And we talk about how we should be handling Pakistan. We talk about oil independence from Saudi Arabia. And mainly we talk about the European Union and how they're trying to bind us up with treaties. We'll talk more about it later. So go to dickmorris.com and get a copy of Screwed. And while you're there, if you feel like it, you can click on the site and enter your info, and I'll send you a personalized book plate that I'll sign and address to you. Thanks a lot.